Thank you so much. Warm welcome to you all. So it's a great honor and a great pleasure to be here and to be able to talk about our work in relation to developing technological designs in support of quality of life, to improve quality of life for people living with dementia. My personal motivation started some 5 years ago, and I think, like many of us here, we all have a personal connection with this topic. In my case, it is my own mother, who is the friendliest woman you will ever meet, I think. Very sociable, lots of humor. She used to be a nurse in her early career, took care for the infirm and mentally handicapped later in her career, and now is increasingly becoming dependent on others herself, as she was diagnosed with middle stage Alzheimer about 4 years ago. When this happened, I felt motivated to really look into the technology that might support her. I'm living about an hour and a half drive away from my mother. I can visit her about once a week, but those other days I would like to stay connected, stay appraised. I would like her to have a really good quality of life. But this is a challenge, as you all probably know. So as a scientist, I started with looking at the literature, as you do. And so I looked at literature on supporting technologies, on telecare and ambient-assisted living. And I found that there's a good deal of literature on needs, both for informal carers that have to take care of people with living with dementia, as well as the people themselves. And those needs are varied. The needs of informal carers are centered around alleviating the burden of care, safety of the patient, peace of mind for the carer, and support for activities of daily living. The needs for people living with dementia themselves are somewhat different, as I found out. They're focused on different aspects of the lived experience. Social connectedness, meaningful activities and meaningful contributions. Independence, especially as mobility limitations become an issue. For instance, my mother, her driver's license was revoked, and she felt immediately closed in. Her circle of action had become dramatically smaller. Physical health and well-being are an obvious worry, but maybe even more psychosocial health, dealing with disorientation, loneliness or emptiness, loss of memories, emotional ups and downs, and sleep quality. What I found was that in the literature, predominantly, the requirements for technology were formulated by people around the people living with dementia, the informal carers, the professionals. And important as this may be, it yields a different list. And so, one of the things that I think is important is to really involve people with dementia. And I'm talking to the converted here, I realize that. In the literature, there's also a predominant argument that arises from the double graying and the associated burden of care. And I felt that this is a really stigmatizing way of talking about this topic in terms of a burden, rather than in terms of opportunities, of possibilities. A lot of literature also talks about user-centered design, inclusive design, participatory design, really important. But there's a wide variety of meanings attached to these terms, some from blatant tech push approaches to really, really inclusive design and co-design. Finally, I also noted the lack of longitudinal studies, real-world deployment, and actual user data, the lack of availability. This was also, to an extent, highlighted by Marjolein yesterday in her keynote. So I was wondering, why is this the case? Why are we looking at technology in essentially different ways from what might be most productive? And I felt that through the literature that I reviewed, I could discern 5 temptations, let's say, of technology. 5 things that technologists, such as myself, like to do. It's a trap that we fall into really easily, like the siren song in the Odyssey. And I'll go through them one by one. So the first temptation is to see technology as a solution to everything. Many times, technology does not offer the right solution. So you have to opt for zero technology and other ways of dealing with the problem. So a good example is, for instance, given by Land van Horne, a community where people living with dementia are cared for in a very special way. It's a very rich environment, a very challenging environment in a positive way, and also an environment where they do person-centered care. And they do this in novel ways. So for instance, the lady on the left, the lady in the bathrobe, let's say, is a nurse. And she is using the bathrobe at night when people might wake up and start wandering around. And her bathrobe is also implicitly signaling it's night now and you can go to sleep, rather than having a nurse's uniform communicate a more formal setting. At the same institute, you find that people are more involved in daily activities like ironing, peeling potatoes, taking care of the garden, taking care of the animals, all non-technological. There are also a few technological interventions there, which is also the reason why we have interacted with them. But by and large, across 30 interventions, small interventions that they did, changes to regular care, they reported 50% less or fewer crises on the side of the people living with dementia, and also a healthier staff, so less sick leave of personnel. Temptation number 2, to put screens everywhere. If you Google on technology for dementia or technology support for dementia, you will find a predominantly screen-based feedback, if you do the images search. Some robots there, always suspiciously happy-looking people that are using the technology. But I would like to argue that this may not be the most productive way of looking at technology. So it seems that technology, especially digital technology, has been equated to screens, to iPads, to smartphones, etc. I think we need to have a broader view of what technology can be and can mean to people. And I hate to break it to you, but the world is not a flat and smooth glass surface. It has weight, it has texture, it has volume, it has depth. And we can use our prehensive skills and our tactile skills to interact with it. And we're losing a lot of that, of those natural born abilities, when we just interact through a glass pane with a virtual world. Also for social interaction, this is incredibly important, to have a sense of touch available. Third temptation is to put sensors in everything and on everything. This is especially predominant in smart home technology, where we can find that sensors are put in beds, in clothing, in furniture, around the house, presence sensors, activity sensors, psychophysiological sensors. The question, though, becomes, are we really serving the people living with dementia using those sensor systems? And frequently we have to conclude that we're actually serving the people around it, maybe to create peace of mind, to give a certain level of surveillance, if you like. But there are clear issues, privacy issues, dignity issues at stake here. Moreover, if you think about smart homes and think about, let's say, automatically triggering sensors which then activate certain events in the environment, the causality chain is really implicit and hard to fathom, even for people without any cognitive impairments. So in all the hype around ubiquitous computing, ambient intelligence, etc., you also find a loss of control, a loss of causality chains that have become opaque. And this leads to incomplete and incorrect mental models and superstitious learning. If you look at censoring in relation to communication applications like the one you see here, there's also a mismatch in terms of reciprocity. It's not really a communication application. There's a discrepancy, if you like, between what the receiver knows and what the sender knows that has been sent. So the key question is, who are we designing for and why are we doing it? The fourth temptation, and certainly one that I personally also have felt, this siren song, if you like, is natural interaction. Natural interaction is sort of the holy grail in human-computer interaction. If we can interact naturally with the digital world, we can bring to that interaction our natural abilities, which makes it ever so much more user-friendly. That's the theory. However, if we look at the current implementations of natural interactions through voice-operated devices, through gesture-operated devices, we see that it's not natural at all. We see that we are struggling in creating the right types of gestures, the right types of voice commands. Moreover, voice commands and gestures are ephemeral. they don't last. They don't give a persistent trail of their state. They give very, very little feed forward as well. You don't know what state or mode they're in. Are they listening? Are they paying attention? Have they processed my command? What if I say something that's irrelevant to the system? How does it distinguish between those two things? And in addition, of course, with voice recognition and gesturing, also relying on things like memory, like motor ability, they may not be suitable to this particular demographic. And finally, a big temptation is functional integration, putting everything into one system, integrating everything into one system. Incidentally, the examples that I'm showing are not to pick on any particular project. These are just sort of random examples almost from the field. Now, functional integration is also a holy grail. The more a system can do, the more powerful it becomes, right? Wrong. Less is more. If you do functional integration, what you get is a weak general system rather than a strong specific one. You get a Swiss Army knife, the equivalent, the digital equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. You get something you wouldn't use yourself to do your cutting with, to work in the shed with, to do your hygiene with, let's say. All these different tools that you see here have a different function location mapping. Right? Some tools are useful in the kitchen, some tools will be useful in the bathroom, some in the workshop or in the shed, some in the living room. But none are really good at it. None are really specialized for it. So it becomes a jack of all trades, master of none. So how do we address this problem? Well, I think we need to do better. I think we need to refocus our efforts away from ameliorating limitations to empowering and affirming old age, remaining open and attached to the world and to other people, staying alive to life itself, as Lynn Siegel so beautifully put it. And this we do through a process that is variably known as co-design or participatory design. And if the guy you see here is Henry Ford, and he's famous for something he said about design. He said, well, if we had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Of course, he's the father of the automobile, the car, the T Ford. In fact, he has a point. People wouldn't be aware of the technological possibilities at the time. They wouldn't come up with a car as a need. And this has been abused. This quote has been misused, I think, by people like Steve Jobs, who says, well, people don't know what they want until I show them what they want. Right? So it's a kind of a tech push arrogance almost. But if you read this quote really well and really closely, you also see there's a need formulation in there. A faster horse is a need formulation for moving from A to B in less time. And I think we need to be especially sensitive and sensitize ourselves to these need formulations. We don't need to put people in the seat of the designer, in the seat of the technology expert, but we need to empower them to talk about their own lives, their own experiences. They're expert by definition of their own lives. And our design process is aimed at doing just that, at putting people into their role of where they are the strongest, where they have the most to say, where they can convey the richness of their lives, their plans, their dreams. And this is what we try to do in our lab in the TU Eindhoven. And it's a combination of well-known processes: user-centered design, co-design, patient-centric design, patient-centric care, and value-sensitive design. We also are greatly attached to a number of fundamental core values that we would like to see reflected in and through our technologies: dignity, autonomy, privacy, community, respect, compassion, freedom of expression, trust. And we do so in living labs. We can't do this alone. We do this in collaboration with other stakeholders, with professionals in the field, and especially also people living with dementia. We observe behavior rather than merely asking for opinions. We implement, we try, we change, and change again. And we try to find out what happens over time, and especially also once we're not there, which is frequently forgotten. That if you're there, you're a factor in helping that technology work. If you're not there, look at what happens. Some examples, and then I'll close. So, in navigation, in wandering behavior, the regular solutions have been to look at GPS as a way to know where a person is. So if they get lost, you can come and pick them back up. The solution that we've come up with after a number of painstaking iterations, I should say, in user-centered design and in co-design, is this one. This is called the Welthuiskompas, or the homing compass, and it has a single arrow pointing home. Wherever you are, it points home. This kind of a simple solution is really helpful, adds value to the people living with dementia, to their lives and their independence. In social settings, in social contact, we find that a lot of the social interaction is regulated or channeled through informal carers. We want to also empower people to have their own access, direct access to family members, etc. And this is just one such solution. It's a stay-tuned radio. It looks like an old-fashioned radio with just a couple of dialing knobs, really easy to operate. It's connected to digital technology where family members can send through WhatsApp messages, voice messages, music to their loved one. And if you use the dial, the tune, you can basically, dial in on the picture of the person, and that person's WhatsApp message will be played. As a final example, I would like to share the experience pillow, the belevingskussen in Dutch. It's a pillow where there's sensors underneath, and those sensors are triggers that are actually triggering music and voice. And it's an excellent experience to create a common experience. It has tactile qualities. Those music files or those voice files are produced by informal carers, by family members. In this case, the daughter of the lady who's using it. And I have a small clip to play to see exactly what this entails. And there's some sound with this, yeah. This is what it's all about, to get that smile, to enhance that quality of life. This particular pillow is now we're in the developmental stages of bringing it to market under the name of Vita Pillow. There's more iterations of development going on, and you can talk to Rens Brankaert, who's sitting over here in the audience, if you want to know more details about these design explorations. I'm really proud that we have managed, in the short time that we've had for this, to really set up a thriving center for dementia and technology at our university, including the built environment, professors from built environment and architecture, professors from industrial design, as well as from human technology interaction. And our aim is to enhance the lives of the people through warm technology, examples of which you just saw. Warm technology in order to add life to years instead of years to life. Thank you.